Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Experimental Psych Laboratory with Paul. Let's march forward from where we left off about basic concepts in experimental research method. Just an overview, we'll apply these concepts that were tapped in your STAT classes, the independent and dependent variable, conceptual and operational definition, and an introduction to these concepts named as experimental and control condition, random assignment as one of the randomization techniques that can be applied that is specific to between subjects experimental design. And then differentiate the difference between subjects and within subjects design. So let's proceed. We will be using the article. We're going to use the article Goldsmith and Dar and apply what we learn in the introductory use of the terms or a recap of the different terms, vocabulary or jargons, research methods. Okay. So you're already familiar with the term variable in your statistics class, wherein it refers to some quantity or quality that varies across individual. Since in psychology, the unit of analysis is individual's behavior, cognition, and affect. We are referring to the variables related to an individual. Variables in different disciplines can be different. For example, in the economics, the unit of analysis refers to the movement of different sectors. In sociology, the unit of analysis refers to their unit of analysis is referring to a group, okay, or group. But in psychology, our unit of analysis is at the level of the individual. For biology, their unit of analysis is in the level of cells. In chemistry, their unit of analysis is in the level of molecules and, let's say, elements, okay? So of the chemicals. So those different levels of analysis are based on what the discipline is about. Okay, kung tungkol saan yung pinag-aaralan nila. Ano yung nature ng pinag-aaralan nila. So we're dealing with variables that are usually referring to an individual level. Okay. So for our vocabulary, if we can recall in our levels of measurement, in your levels of measurement in your statistics, you have nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. So for the sake of simplicity, we are categorizing the first two, or the nominal and the ordinal, as categorical. Okay? So we are referring to some assignment of a category or of some level. Then on the latter part, the interval and ratio level of measurement, we're going to refer to it as continuous. Okay? So let's use continuous. So continuous instead of quantitative. Okay? So, yan. So again, we're just going to simplify it to categorical for nominal and ordinal, and continuous for interval and ratio level of measurement. Okay, is that clear? So again, if you are using numbers as values, wherein you can use that information to compute algebraic expressions, uh, then you're now using continuous data. But for classifications or some categories of some condition, for example, you are describing some kind of condition in your study, then you are referring to categorical. Okay? So we will encounter that later on as we continue. Okay. So again, you're already familiar to the terms independent and dependent variables. So just to have a quick review, okay? So in experimental research methods, we are inferring cause and effect relationships because it can fulfill all the three criteria that were presented in the past lecture about the requirements in order to infer cause and effect relationship. So if you can recall, it's the temporal precedence, covariation of x and y, and the absence of alternative explanation. Using experimental research method, you were able to actually fulfill those requirements. Okay. By one, for instance, so for the covariation, you found in your statistical analysis that your X and Y are correlated. For the temporal precedence, you made sure in your method, in your procedure, that the independent variable is presented first prior to your in prior to your dependent variable. And for the elimination of alternative explanations or the confounding variables, you will encounter later a technique that is used in order to eliminate that or in order to fulfill that requirement of being able to remove alternative explanations in predicting your y. Okay? So it means that your x and y are your variables of interest. So there are different names for that. Strictly speaking, we only use independent variable and dependent variable for experiment. The popular ones for non-experiments, we use the term explanatory factor and out oops explanatory factor and outcome, okay, and predictor and outcome variable. I don't usually encounter the term output in articles. Response variable usually also not mentioned. So explanatory factor, predictor variable is usually used term and outcome variables also. This means that variable z or z is the variable of disinterest. I think it will show up later. So this is your target. You want to determine whether they really are related with the cause and effect relationship. For the variables of interest, namely your x and y, in an experiment, you are manipulating your independent variable. As a researcher, when you said manipulating the IV, you are the one who is designing the conditions where the participants are supposed to respond to. You are assuming that given the difference in your conditions, you are expecting different outcomes. Okay? For the dependent variable, you are simply measuring your outcome, your dependent variable. You're simply measuring it. So you're simply looking at whether it will vary based on the manipulation you did. Okay? So in surveys, both the independent and both the predictor and outcome variables are measured. But in experiments, only the dependent variable is measured while the independent variable is manipulated. In surveys, you simply measure the variables. You simply, for instance, administer scales and then do not deliberately design what your participants will encounter. Okay? So there's no deliberate manipulation on the independent variable or the predictor. Okay? So think of an example of something that can induce positive affect aside from showing a funny video. Can you think of an example? An event or a stimulus that can induce positive affect? Okay, we have responses here. Hugs. Yeah, compliments. Oo nga, puwede rin naman. Maraming studies about well-being in terms of long term, yung when the individual is married or unmarried. Lambing, job promotion, achievements. Okay, so physical contact like hugs, affection. Okay, and affirmation from other people. Okay. Okay. So by having those sources, it can induce positive affect. So in your experiment, for instance, maybe what you can do here as an experimental manipulation, perhaps something about prediction of affect, prediction of emotion of some character, no? And then you were asked to predict what would the character or protagonist feel if in the vignette they have a romantic partner, they were hugged, they received compliment, they received affection from another person, or they achieved a certain level in their career, such as job promotion. So let's say the prediction could be how would a person, let's say, project the emotion of a character. Okay, kunyari empathy, then you're studying. So for instance, dito naman, specific to a person experiencing positive affect. So notice in my examples that I did not necessarily make use of this as the experimental condition to the actual participant. Okay? Kasi baka merong limitation. Okay? Baka merong ethical considerations or limitation. And in terms of how possible is it to induce to actual person. Or maybe in a laboratory setting, usually researchers devise some computer tasks that would have a proxy to simulate the same construct to a person. Usually, the economists apply that. They concoct some kind of structure in a task to simulate some kind of related construct that they wish to observe. How about measuring positive affect? What else aside from noting if someone is laughing or not can you think of to measure your dependent variable? Okay, smiling, so not merely just laughing. When we refer to measurement, it's difficult to say something that is abstract. So when you say very happy, how are you going to measure that? Rate the app 5 stars. So positive affect. Or yun naman evaluation kasi yun. Pero if you ask a person how satisfied they are with the service, di ba, positive affect yun, positive evaluation. So, self-report, I mean, okay? So, ito, inobserve ka ng researcher. Pwede rin naman na nireport mo na happy ka. Okay? So, next. Ito na yung tinutukoy ko kanina, variables of disinterest. So, we discussed this last meeting wherein there are potential factors lurking around that are not your particular interest at the moment in your research question. Although you can acknowledge that there are many potential lurking variables out there, but you want to test X and dot Z, okay? So these are considered as the term we use for that are confounders or variables of disinterest. Okay? Your third variable can have a different kinds of roles. Could be a moderator, so X predicting Y. It could be a moderator or a mediator. I'm just applying continuous line. That's why there is a line in between. A mediator or a control variable. Okay? So it depends on the literature on how you wish to make use of the confounding variable in your statistical model. So we can talk about that later on. Depends on you on how you wish to use or how to control your confounders. Okay? But being aware of that from the get-go is crucial in designing your experiment. That's why your conceptual definition and operational definition matters because any potential confounders can be considered in designing your experiment, in designing your deliberate manipulation with a high sensitivity of presence of confounders. Because again, what we're doing in experiments is that we want to eliminate any other any other alternative explanation to your dependent variable. And with the presence of confounders, if you were unable to account for them, then your readers can always doubt the credibility of your findings. There will always a doubt. And if the design is not rigorous, the doubt on whether I am confident about your conclusion or not will always be there. Again, we want our readers to be confident when we report our findings. Okay, now let us apply. You can open Goldsmith and Dorr article. Okay? So, but this is the bullet points that I wish you to focus on so that we're on the same page. Okay. So, researchers wanted to study the effect of positive and negative framing, effect of incentive framing, okay, on task persistence. They hypothesized that people will persist more to do a task when incentive is framed negatively or it is framed as a loss than when framed positively. Okay? So what is the independent variable and what is the dependent variable in this example? In this example, we are particular to incentive framing. Just to have our conceptual map in using the IV and the DV. So the box here is referring to a variable with concrete data being used. No? So so incentive framing so refers to your IV and the DV refers to task persistence. Okay. Okay, now let's proceed to conceptual and operational definition. Okay. You encountered this already in your statistics class, wherein conceptual definition is referring to how you understand a construct. Just like in my explanation earlier about the different theoretical research articles, they different theoretical research articles may be referring to the same construct, but the way they explain it may be different. So let's say from a developmental perspective, from a personality research perspective, from socio-cognitive perspective, there are different ways on how they apply it, such as imagine you have a group of blind men who are located in the different parts of an elephant, and they were asked to describe the elephant. So the blind man on the trunk describes the elephant differently from the blind man on the elephant's ears, and the blind man on the body, and the blind man on the elephant's tail. So they're all referring to the same thing, but their perspective are coming from different directions, and they all have a point, diba? That can be acceptable. So you're not saying that one is better than the other because they may be valid all at once. So um so that's how conceptual definition works. Sometimes they are coming from a different approach on how they arrive with with the definition. For example, you had your definition regarding some overall evaluation where you have global judgment about your life if it meets certain criteria, or if you have sense of calmness or mm, positive low intensity positive affect with positive direction of your cognition, a perspective referring to a definition that is empirically oriented, referring to the frequencies of instances of the uh, when the positive emotions are experienced as compared to, let's say, experiencing negative emotions in one's totality of his lifetime, diba? So you come up with different definitions, and you can say that they're all sound, okay? And based on those definitions, you now will come up with measurements that correspond to those definitions. For instance, if you are referring to global judgment, perhaps a self-report questionnaire referring to one's self-evaluation, overall evaluation about their life, if they meet certain criteria, you know, in their life. That's maybe the composition of your scale. And the other is referring to their present affect, no? Whether they feel calm, they feel tranquil, they report some kind peace of mind if you consider that as a positive affect. And when you can also include their outlook about the future, okay? Because those are the dimensions that you refer to in your other definition. And lastly, on the aggregated experiences of positive affect, there's this what we call experience sampling method, wherein the participants were given pager pa dati or smartphones, wherein at a certain period in their day, they will be asked what they feel. So it's called experience sampling method. So notice that given the different conceptual definitions you offer, there are counterpart operational definition to capture those. Okay? So for example, you measure you measure happiness by asking how many times they smiled in a day. So depending on their memory, no? And the other is something that is transient and re, not reflexive, but as a reaction to stimuli. We could have, let's say, neurophysiological measure, EMG, where there's an activation of their smiling muscle, and of course, ever so useful self-report scale. Okay. So now let's apply this. Okay. I have these example. I have 5 bullets and a question. I will read out the 5 bullets here. In manipulating the independent variable, positive and negative framing to predict task persistence, the participants were asked to solve anagrams. Framing of incentive is positive if encouraged through gain, and negative when encouraged through loss. The researchers designed 2 conditions. One group were given $25 per correct solution and 1.5 in total for a perfect score. The other group were given 1.5 before they even begin the anagram task. So whenever they have a wrong solution, whenever they have incorrect response, they will take back 25.25 dollars. So now I have these 2 boxes. So what I want you to do is go to stamp. So in annotations function in your menu tab, put a star on the box for conceptual definition and put a heart on inside the box for operational definition. So this is conceptual. Oops, conceptual and heart for operational. Okay. So now let's move on. So good job. Di naman kayo nang gagaya lang, no? Okay, next. Okay, so just to update our conceptual map, this is how it works. You have your incentive framing as your independent variable, and you have 2 conditions in your experiment. You have positive framing, define it conceptually by defining it as incentivizing through gain, and incentivizing in a way that is framed as loss. Okay? So for the negative framing. And to make it concrete, a reward in a form of money is offered incrementally and decrementally to follow these conditions. Okay. So now, to add to your vocabulary, we are referring to positive framing and negative framing as your levels of the IV. So levels of the IV refers to the number of, so this, since this is experimental research method and your IV is manipulated, the number of conditions of your IV, of your manipulated IV. Okay. So now, again, you have 1 and 2. So you have 2 levels of your IV. You have 2 conditions in your experiment. One is positively framed and the other is negatively framed. I count how many conditions did I deliberately design in my experiment. 1, 2. I have 2 levels of the IV. Okay. So now, I have another question. Is it continuous? Is my IV continuous or categorical? So put a star if continuous or a heart if categorical. Okay. So the correct answer is, drum roll please. The correct answer is categorical variable. Why is that so? Okay. It is categorical because you designed the conditions. The design of your conditions are technically categorical. So you have two categories of your conditions. Perhaps you got fixated when you see some numbers here. Okay. So the reason why, even though you used numbers here, you only use those numbers to have concrete operational definition of your variables. Okay. So for example, what are my examples in your class for the to determine whether there's experiment or not an experiment? The location of the booth and the presence of the picture. So it works like that. Okay. So positive framing could be referring to a condition wherein I put them to the Yuchenko Hall, and the negative framing could be a condition that could be analogous to, sorry, not really analogous to, but I'm just referring to a point where there are two categories. So one booth is put in the Yuchenko and the other is on Miguel. So this is for the presence of image of a mom and, let's say, absence of a picture of a mom, something like that. Okay. So it's not continuous data. The IV is not continuous data. It is rather categorical because as a researcher, I designed those conditions and they are not, paano ba? It's positive framing. So I assigned that it is positive framing and I assigned that it is negative framing. Is that clear? Why it is categorical? Okay. So again, I made categories. I made the conditions. So they are categories. Okay. Next. Pero that doesn't mean na continuous po siya. That's why it's categorical. Okay. Hindi siya continuous. Okay. Kasi, halimbawa, meron kang measurement. Itong measurement mo, planado na yan. Okay? Dinesign mo yung itong values na yan. Hindi yan collected data from your participant. Hindi mo kinolek sa question na to, hindi mo kinolek kung ilan yung tama nilang sagot in terms of how much they earned. Tinanong mo ba? Importante ba sa'yo na malaman kung ilan yung na-earn nila sa research question mo? So, kung hindi mo yan hinhypothesize how much they earn, then it's not your IV. This is your IV. This is just your way to concretize how is this going to be observed. Okay? So, halimbawa, mag-i-induce ako ng boredom. My way to operationalize that is to lengthen the time that they will wait. So, now the time is there. You measured the time. You ensured that they will wait for a longer period of time compared to the non-boring inducement of independent variable. Does it make it a continuous variable? Yeah, parang socioeconomic status po ba? Pwede. Technically, that's ordinal, di ba? Na kinlassify mo sila eh. Di ba kanina sa sinabi explanation ko, we are simplifying the use of levels of measurement where we use nominal, nominal and ordinal as categories, categorical variable. Naalala nyo? Tama, parang socio-economic status. Hindi sa number of their household income natin sila sinukat, pero sa clustering ng ano nila, ng economic status nila. So nasa ordinal level data siya, pero together we use this as categorical. Ito ay low socioeconomic status. So merong certain income bracket para masabi na sila ay nasa low socioeconomic status. Let's say from 0 to 10,000 pesos a month, kunyari lang. And ito ay, let's say, middle ay nasa, let's say, kunyari lang, 20 to 30K na range. So, you have your continuous data, pero in your analysis, you're only categorizing them. This is ordinal, meron siyang, kumbaga, step, pero sa analysis, we are simplifying them as categorical. So yun, so halimbawa, in the next 2 years, meron na namang update yung ano ba ang mga median income, tapos base sa income ng bawat household, magkakaroon na naman ng bagong bracket para sa ano, magkakaroon na naman ng bagong bracket for socioeconomic status. Halimbawa, hanapin natin ngayon na. Hindi ko sure kung meron na for 2023. Pero let's try 2022. Tingnan natin if it is different from 2019. 2022, yun, income classification. Yan, so nasagot na. So according to PIDS, this is a government agency or office. Ito. Ayan, 2020 daw. Ayan, so ang middle income, ang layo, di ba? Ang middle income noong 2020 ay 41,000 to 73K monthly income in a household. Nung 2020 yan. Pero ba't ganun? 2022 sobrang laki. Baka iba to. Dali. There should be a figure here. Ayun, dito pala. In 2018, sabi, Pinoys need to earn 38 to 43,000 a month to be considered as a middle class. Pero ngayon, ito na daw siya. 43 to 76K. Yan pala. Okay? So, mahirap palang tingnan siya kapag, kapag nasa labas lang. So, gets nyo yung ibig ko sabihin? You have new number as figures. Yes, you have numbers. But what we are, since they're clustered together to make meaningful classification, it's now a categorical data. It is ordinal, pero sa analysis natin, we are using that as categorical data. Okay. So yun na, kapag pag magsa-survey kayo, hanapin nyo sa PIDS ano yung pinaka-updated na classification ng socioeconomic status. So, yan pala, ito pala. Yan, ito yung natatandaan ko eh. Alam nyo yung mga nag-iikot-ikot sa barangay, tas tinatanong yung household income no? Apart from other demographic profile? Yes, yung nagse-census. Tama. So yung mga nagse-census, nakukuha nila yung datos tungkol dun 'Di ba tinatanong kayo, o sa household niyo, although hindi gano'n sila magtanong 'no, magkano kinikita ng tatay mo? Ay, ilan yung nagtatrabaho sa bahay niyo? O ate, kuya, ganyan. Tas magkano yung kinikita sa isang buwan? Tas kung racket economy 'yan, ang tatanungin nila is kung i-estimate niyo na as average, magkano yung kinikita niyo sa isang taon nung racket? So halimbawa sa isang taon 100,000 yung racket. So i-divide na lang nila into 12. So para makuha yung monthly income. 'Di ba kasi ngayon gig economy, 'di ba? Yun, so dun niyo yan nakukuha. So yun, so technically kapag inanalyze niyo siya, sa'tin for simplified way of doing it, let's assume or let's simplify it as categorical. But for purists, sa mga mathematician, halimbawa, nag-consult kayo sa ibang discipline, no? Hindi sa psychologist or in some other practice. Kung, let's say, purist statistician ang tinanong nyo, re-recommend sila ng ibang klaseng analysis kasi technically, ordinal data yan, eh. So, merong ibang analysis na ginagamit dyan. Pero sa atin kasi, uh, sa practice ng discipline natin, we're trying to simplify it. Kasi ang goal lang naman is magamit mo yung tool, statistics as a tool to interpret it. So, pag in-streamline siya na mas madali, nagiging very helpful yung tool in that manner. Okay? So, ganun siya. So, next, let's apply the operational definition of the DB. Okay, so I will create another set of boxes, and I want you to mark a star for conceptual definition. Okay, and stamp a heart for operational definition. Conceptual, then operational. Okay. The first bullet refers to the conceptual definition of actually the IV. Okay. To answer what is the operational definition of the DV, the answer is the third bullet because the outcome, your dependent variable here refers to motivation or persistence. And the way they operationalize that is by measuring the time spent in doing the anagram task. So mind you that the anagram task that they use in the study is actually unsolvable. So there were parts that are solvable so that you keep on engaging in the task. So it varies in difficulty. But the anagram task items that were unsolvable, sorry. So the anagram task items that were unsolvable are the ones being used. On those parts, dun mini-measure yung time they spent solving those items, the unsolvable. We expect, for instance, that there will be a difference in time spent in doing the unsolvable anagram task items if they differ in the incentive framing condition that they were assigned to. Okay? So that's how we are using that. Okay? So updating our conceptual map, we identified our dependent variable, and we have our corresponding conceptual and operational definition of our dependent variable. So my question is the DV continuous or dali, continuous or categorical? So On the box, use a star if continuous and heart if categorical. Okay, so it is obvious that this is a continuous level of measurement. Okay. If we are to be particular, whether it is interval or ratio, time in seconds is ratio because 0 is meaningful. Okay? Merong ibig sabihin yung 0 as absolute. Okay? Oops. Na-stop share ko. Okay, next. Okay, now to introduce to you the terms experimental and control condition. Okay, so this is easy to understand. Experimental condition simply means that the participants are assigned to intervention condition where the intervention is applied. Okay. And for the control condition is the condition where the intervention is not applied. This is also considered as the baseline. Okay? Usually, in experiments, the researchers are testing against the status quo. They're testing against what is already known, testing against what is already established. And they want to look whether there will be any changes if they incorporate some kind of intervention or the deliberate manipulation in their work. So, for example, well, just to save time, in this comic strip, it seems like this group of mice are assigned to the experimental condition. Perhaps they were given some kind of intervention. So intervention does not necessarily mean that you're incorporating something that will cure the participant. So we just use the term intervention in its broadest general sense that you are incorporating something new. 'Di ba? Intervene. To intervene means to, 'di ba? To block the current scenario and do something in order to have a certain impact, 'di ba? Kaya, yun yung meaning ng intervention dito. Baka kasi mamaya sabihin nyo, miss, paano yan? Mukha namang na-stress yan. Mukha bang intervention yun? 'Di ba? Or kaya naman, pwede rin naman na sila pala yung experimental condition kung, let's say, meron akong group of mice that are anxious. Kunyari, nag-undergo na sila ng some kind of protocol sa animal studies that will make them anxious for the long term. So, let's say for the long term, I have set of mice that are already anxious. And I provide some kind of intervention tapos sa kanila ko binigay. So sa kanila nawala na yung anxiety nila but among them they're still anxious. So baka naman ito yung experimental condition. Okay? So depende pa rin kaya nga babasahin niyo yung literature eh. Ano ba yung baseline na tinutukoy sa study? Okay? So kung ano yung baseline, yun yung control condition. Okay? But sometimes, katulad dito kay Goldsmith and Dar, parang wala namang lumalabas na control condition. Sometimes this is also called as the placebo in clinical studies. So in clinical studies, they were led to believe that they are ingesting a medicine. So depende sa belief nila na gagaling sila, that could be enough pala. Candy lang pala yung ininom nila, pero gumaling sila. So kung kasing effective lang ng gamot mo yung placebo, edi hindi na kailangan lumabas sa market yun kasi edi mag-placebo na lang tayo, 'di ba? Kung will lang pala ng tao yung kayang makapagpagaling sa kanya in the first place, but kailangan mo pa ng another drug for it kung hindi niya kayang i-outdo yung placebo. Okay? So let's proceed. Let's try to apply it here. So among the two, okay, so nag-example ako dito. Among these two boxes, this one is the experimental condition, the third bullet. And this one is control. So why is that? Notice in the fourth bullet, they were given incentive regardless of their performance, whether they have correct or incorrect responses. They will have uniform degree or amount of reward. So that's how it works. It's a control condition because it works as a baseline. Okay? So the way that I put it here, the way I designed it here, the incentive does not vary according to one's performance. So that could be a useful baseline. Okay? So in different experiments, you can design different baselines. So let's proceed. So we have now updated our conceptual map on the independent variable with regard to conceptual and operational definition. So in this scenario, I introduced a third level of the IV. So I now have 1, 2, 3. I have 3 levels of the IV. So in this example, I have 3 levels of the IV. Okay? I have 3 levels of my IV kasi meron akong 3 conditions. Okay, next. Now, ito, very important tong part na to. Okay? So, random assignment. Okay. Random assignment is a randomization technique that we apply in a between subjects design experimental design. Okay? Again, random assignment is a randomization technique that we apply when we are using between subjects experimental design. Okay? For the within subjects design, is another randomization technique for that. Okay? It's called counterbalancing. But we're going to talk about that later, in the later module. For now, let us talk about what is simpler, which is the random assignment. Try to imagine that in our study we have 2 levels of the IV, right? So imagine a fish bowl, okay, where you have paper. Oops, hindi kita. Where you have your paper, okay? So one identical pieces of paper. One refers to A and another one refers to condition B. Same goes for this fish bowl where you have uh, A and B. So for example, they have a target number of participants, let's say 100. So their target is 100 participants. They made 50 pieces of this and 50 pieces of this. So identical pa rin yan. Okay? So what I do here is that whenever I draw the paper, I put it back. Okay? And then for this part, whenever I draw a paper, I throw it away. So throw away. So now my question is, my question here is, are they equivalent? Oops. Are they equivalent or not? So I want you to put a stamp near the equal sign, a check or an X, if you think that these two scenario 1 and scenario 2, are equivalent. Again, if you find it equivalent, put a check stamp, and if you find them not equivalent, put an X stamp if they're conceptually the same. The answer here is it is not conceptually equivalent. Okay. So what's happening here in scenario A, we're putting back di ba sabi dito, they should have equal chance. So they have 50% chance to be assigned to either A or B. Okay? So if you put back the paper, they will always have the 50% chance. Okay? In this scenario, in the second scenario, let's say you've drawn A the first time, okay? Now you have 14. At first, you start with 50 over 100 chance. And now, when you, after drawing one paper away, you're now having a 49 over 99 chance. This gives the chances are on the next trial, so draw 1, draw 2, draw 3, there will be a higher chance of being assigned to condition B. So now, in principle, you're no longer observing the principle of having equal chance of getting assigned to all of the conditions. Okay. So now the probabilities become different and you're no longer meeting the requirement of having equal chance. Okay. Here is another conceptual explanation as to why we are doing it. We are doing it because we are removing, remember the three requirements for you to infer causal relationship, one of which, one is temporal precedence, the other is covariation of X and Y, and the other is elimination of alternative explanations. In the randomization procedure, what you are doing is you're spreading evenly the sources of systematic error. Remember your confounding factors? We are already assuming that there are confounding factors lurking around, and if they are around, we want to make sure that they are evenly distributed among your conditions. For example, you have a picture, and in your, let's say, powdered juice picture, you notice that you have some residue in your picture, right? That residue can be analogous to what we call systematic error or your confounding variables. So what we want to do in your systematic error is to spread it evenly. So how are we going to do that? We stir we stir the pitcher before putting the juice on each glass. So if we do not allow the stirring to happen before you put the juice on your glasses, we are now probably unevenly distributing your systematic error to your glasses. The glasses are analogous to your conditions. So would you like to have a glass of juice with a lot of residue on your part but not on the others? Di ba hindi? So that's analogous to systematic error. We want the systematic error, our confounding variables, to be spread evenly, to be divided evenly to our conditions. That's why we need to be very careful in applying this principle of having equal chance. We draw some subset of the population. So that's our sample. Okay. And then we apply random assignments to have equal chance to be assigned to our conditions. Okay. And then we measure our dependent variable and observe whether there is any difference. Is this one higher or is this one higher? Okay. So that's the question. Okay. In our example, mas mahaba ba ang oras na igugugol ng mga participants na na-assign sa negative framing or yung mga binabawian ng $0.25 a quarter, binabawian sila ng quarter for every mistake they commit. Okay? So, yun yung, and then we want to test kung mas sensitive sila doon, mas tatagalan ba nila magtiyaga doon sa unsolvable anagram items. Okay? Again, to update our conceptual map. So, ito yung mga procedure na nangyari. Nag-draw tayo ng subset of population with their sample, randomly assigned to our conditions. So, they have 33.33% chance of being assigned to positive framing or to negative framing and control condition. We put it to fate kung saan sila mapupunta regardless kung ano yung bilang nila. So now, our paper will be like this. Okay?